We're on chapter 5, the conduct of inspections. And I'll tell you this, as I was parsing this book, the first time I prepped for it, I thought Leif and I were going to get through half of it. And I thought Leif and I will do back-to-back podcasts. We'll do half in one podcast. So we'd cover 60 or so pages, and then we'd do half. We just do them back-to-back. We made it through 13 pages. So now as I'm reading it, I'm looking for like the breaking points or where I can go, okay, this is a good section. This section today, the end of this section we're going to cover today is it's freaking epic. I don't throw that word around very often. So we'll get there. But this chapter 5 starts off with the conduct of inspections. And the first question is, why inspect? And then it says there is a saying, an organization does well only those things the boss checks. This truism originated, insofar as I am concerned, from a speech that I heard made by a vice president of one of our largest corporations. This is not a new thought to anyone who has military experience, because I have often heard it expressed as anything that has not been inspected has been neglected. I changed the way I said that word to neglected, but it made it sound a lot better. So anything that has not been inspected has been neglected. If these sayings are true, and I think they are, it follows that anyone who has an important position must be able to check in on or inspect the operations of which he's responsible. When Leif saw this, I think I sent a picture of this to Leif because this is, a line that I hear Leif say a lot. It's a line that he heard me say a lot, and we always attribute it to Hackworth. And guess what? It didn't come from Hackworth. So, how to inspect. We're talking about how to inspect. Civilians often think of a non-commissioned officer and officer as a demon inspector. A demon inspector. A good inspector is certainly not a demon, but good inspectors are not plentiful in the Army or out of it. However, to be a successful non-commissioned officer or a successful officer, one should be a competent inspector. This quality cannot be attained without a considerable amount of study, planning, and practice. Now, this is interesting because I wasn't sure how much of this section to cover, because inspections are not something that I utilize to any great extent as a leader. When I was a leader, inspections was not one of my big tools. And so I thought, well, we'll talk about it. You certainly have to inspect things, and I get that. And that's why I would say that. Hey, an organization does well only things the boss checks. I've said that many times, and I believe it. But also, I believe that if I have to inspect you, that means I'm doing something wrong somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like if my gig is I've got to inspect you, that means I'm making some other kind of mistake somewhere, because should I have to inspect that your weapon is ready?
Yeah.
Should I have to inspect that you've prepared for an operation? Should I have to inspect that you've done the work that you're supposed to do? I shouldn't have to inspect it. If I've led correctly, then you know why you're doing what you're doing, and therefore you don't really need to get inspected because you understand the why and you make things happen. So I've always had that attitude, and it's been very successful for me. So I wasn't sure how much I was going to get into this whole inspection mode, because what I don't want to do is create a bunch of leaders that are going out there becoming these inspection happy, dig down, hey, I'll come and inspect you. It's funny with my kids. If my kids, whenever my wife's not around, my kids they have to do everything, right? And so I'll say, what time will you be ready for inspection? And they just get they know what that means. I'm going to inspect, and they better be squared away. So I don't want to pass on this idea that, hey, you guys got to be inspection freak. I never want people to think that the military is what the military is portrayed in boot camp, which is you're getting inspected all the time. So that being said, as I read through this, I thought, I better cover this because, well, you'll see. So here we go. Back to the book. It is very seldom that I visit a unit, an installation, or a headquarters that I do not see things which are apparently not correct and which only need pointing out to get them promptly corrected. So it's very seldom that you go somewhere and you see something and you go, hey man, why isn't that right? And all you have to do is tell them that it's not right, and they can fix it. I notice a similar situation in reading the reports of the Inspector General inspections. I often wonder why the responsible person on the spot has not noticed them and corrected them. You're there. Why don't you notice that this shortfall exists? Here's one reason. It may be because he has lived so close to them that his ability to notice them has become fatigued. So what does that mean? You're not detached.
Yeah.
You're not detached, so you don't see these mistakes. But I am inclined to think that it is because, so that's a possibility, but I am inclined to think that is because he has not conducted his inspections in a systematic and effective way. So even when you're not detached, even when you're totally engaged, if you inspect correctly, you should still be able to pick up on things that you would otherwise miss. Too often, officers and senior non-commissioned officers have a general look-see rather than an inspection. They go through their areas of responsibility without noticing things to correct, and what is more, without noticing good things for which someone should be complimented. That's one of the reasons why I had to cover this, because an inspection isn't about finding what I can nitpick about you. It's actually about what I can find to compliment you on. Totally different attitude. My purpose for inspecting you is so I can find things that you're doing awesome at and compliment you for them. To become a good inspector requires, as I have said before, study, planning, and practice. It requires study to be sure that he knows what is correct and what is not correct in the field of his responsibility. It requires planning to prepare a schedule of inspections in such a way that over a period of time he has given the necessary attention to all aspects of his field of responsibility. And then it requires practice in order to notice promptly whether the important things are correct or incorrect. Notice he said important things. Important things. And you can absolutely get bogged down in things that are not important. And in fact, the military, if you're not careful, you will start to focus on things that are not important. You know, on the last podcast, you were talking about the fact that when you were a squadron commander, your attitude was, we are inspection ready at all times. Does that mean that we scrub the grout on the backside of the whatever bathroom in the third floor? No, because does that really matter? Is that an important thing? No. Is it clean? Yes, it's clean. Absolutely, it's clean. It's fully functional. It's totally ready. But we're not wasting time on it because it's not really that important. What is important? The mechanics of the freaking aircraft.
Yeah.
The cleanliness of the area where we're actually doing work that keeps these machines up and running.
If I had my guys scrub the grout of the bathrooms prior to someone coming to visit, I'm telling them that's what I care about. And that's not what I want them to care about.
In the study phase, most people find that a checklist is necessary. Think about that. A checklist is necessary. This ensures, and you can tell, and I've been picking this up as I'm reading this. This General Clark, he's kind of an anal retentive dude, for sure. He's about checklists. He's about inspections. He's got that nature to him. So we need to keep that in mind. We need to keep in mind that why is this guy with all this experience, why is he using a checklist? Why is that? Oh, because it works. I used to take every single piece of gear that I would take on trips, and I would have a little checkbox next to it to make sure I had what I needed to have. Checklist. Why checklist? This ensures that important things are not overlooked and assists the inspector until he has become so proficient through practice that he carries a mental checklist in his head. There are inherent evils in the use of a checklist unless it is made out well. It does focus great attention to the items listed, which may cause other important things which may have been left off the checklist to be overlooked. It must be remembered that to inspect is to emphasize, which is what you just said. To inspect is to emphasize. If you are cleaning the grout on the third floor bathroom, that's what you're emphasizing as important. And honestly, do I want 1 minute of time when I'm running an F-35 squadron that has multi-million-dollar aircraft that are life-saving machines? Do I want anyone scrubbing on the third floor, in the third floor bathroom that never gets used and never gets seen? No. In the planning phase, one should make a list of all items or phases of his responsibility on which he wants to check. In most jobs, this list will probably have 30 or 40 items on it. It is manifestly impossible in one trip through a platoon, company, battalion, battle group, or similar area to check adequately all 40 items. Therefore, he should keep this list and select from it 3 or 4 items each week or other interval. When he inspects, he should do a very thorough job on these selected items. Of course, to do a thorough job, he must have studied up on each item selected beforehand so that he knows what is right and what is wrong and what to look for. By selecting a new group of 3 or 4 items each week, he will, over a period of time, have covered all of them. And by the time he comes to the end of the list, he will have really checked all the aspects of his responsibility and will become a master of his job. What is more, at that time, if he has been effective as an inspector, his responsibility will be carried out in a superior manner. Great. You know what else is awesome about that? What's cooler? What's better? What to the last podcast about humanizing yourself to your troops? What does a better job of humanizing? Telling you, hey, once every 3 months, I'm going to come and inspect 40 items, and it's going to take 8 hours, and you're going to be standing at parade rest the whole time? Or I'm going to come down once a week. I'm going to check 2 or 3 things, get to know you, talk to you. It's obvious.
Yeah, and maybe even tell you, hey, you're doing an awesome job down here. This is good to go.
Man, the difference. Okay, let me ask you this. Let's say I'm a nitpicker. Let's say I roll down to your flight line and I see that there's some dust on one of these pieces of tools, and I walk over with my white glove and I inspect it and I hold it up to you and I go, this is junk. You're a slob. Everything else is great, but you're a slob. Okay. First of all, what do I care about? I've showed you that I care about dust on the tools. Second of all, are you inspired to do a good job for me?
No.
What if I come down and I look at your toolbox and I go, man, I can see that the way you got your tools labeled, that you are a professional. That is legit. You know what? Every time I start up one of these aircraft, I'm going to feel good in my heart that you're down here maintaining these aircraft. Thank you. What is that guy doing? That guy's polishing his tools, man.
Totally, man.
He's polishing his tools. So do you want to rule out of fear or do you want to rule out of admiration? God, how is that hard?
If you take one step back and think of the outcome you're trying to create, the real outcome that you're trying to create, and as a squadron commander, you just described it. I want 150 maintainers who their entire commitment to life is to make sure these airplanes are safe to operate. That's what I want. A commitment to making sure that we have these machines that are safe. If I just think about that, it's actually not hard to go, well, which of these 2 ways is going to get my guy, my Marine, to think the way that I want him to think? It's really not that hard. You just have to reverse positions and go, how would I feel about the guy coming down doing this to me? Go, oh, well, this makes sense. That doesn't make sense. Just do the one that makes sense. And you actually will get the outcome that you want. You know, when you were saying that, I was thinking, if you can get a little connection of, hey, Jocko, I noticed these tools over here are like kind of dusty. Are these kind of a weight? Do you not use these? Are these not necessary? Is this a bunch of stuff that you got to manage that's not important because these things obviously are getting used like crazy? Hey, is there a way to kind of relieve you of some connection? How they go, actually, sir, those things are terrible. We don't use them because they don't work and they just sit over there and collect dust. It's just an example, but if you can make the connection between what they're doing to get that outcome that you want, it's actually not that hard to do.
Man. All right. Back to the book. Whether he announces beforehand the items that he is going to check each, that whole conversation we just had, that's like something that we need to continue to talk about I say this all the time, is like, it's really obvious with ego, right? When you're in it, you don't notice how stupid you look. And when you step outside and you see someone else behaving that way, you go, oh, this person's an idiot. Their ego's involved. But when it's you, no, it's me. It's different. It's different. No one will notice. I want that attention. I want that, hey, you didn't recognize me. You know what? I want my black belt. How's that work?
Yeah.
Not good.